The relic weapons in Final Fantasy XIV were not made for you, is something that I keep saying to people in my Twitch chat, which by the way I stream live on Twitch, but I want to kind of iterate on what that means from like a game design perspective. But also, hello, my name is Edrem. I'm an animatronic puppet VTuber, and welcome on in. So, the way that this kind of goes is, I say that every expansion, the relic changes in what it is going for, what you have to grind out, you know, what the requirements are. And we're like, why? Why does that change, right? And the thing is, the relics from a game design perspective are designed first to get people to engage with content longer or with content they wouldn't normally engage with for longer, right? So in another video that I talked about how every bit of content in the game has a lifespan and a player pool. So as the lifespan of content goes down, the player pool goes down. Eventually it reaches the point where there's not enough players really to sustain that bit of content anymore, and it kind of dies. That's like a very statistical game dev way of looking at like, oh, why can't we make a party finder for Eden 8 Savage right now? Why won't it fill? Like, because it's very, very old, so many of people have already gone through the content and used up its lifespan, so there's no player pool. No player pool. But what happens if we've got content in that expansion, current expansion, that we want to make sure has a larger player pool, right? We want to try and get people to go towards doing the content, even when maybe they're not quite 100% interested in it. And that's what the relic weapons are. The relic weapons are the carrot on a stick to get people to do this, which is why they don't really make unique content for the relic weapons. Instead, they have relic weapons attached to something else in the game. And what's interesting is that this has changed over time, right? If we go back to A Realm Reborn, the Zodiac relics, now those were a pain in the ass to grind. I will say, right? The pain in the ass to grind. Even now, they are still not all that fun to grind, even though they've been heavily, heavily nerfed. And the reason for that is in ARR, you had a big part of the content. A lot of fates. Lot of fates in ARR. In fact, for people that don't know, back in A Realm Reborn, you didn't really do dungeon spamming. Like, you could, but it wasn't relatively good EXP. You did dungeons if you need to do it for the storyline, or you need to do it for your grand company, or you want to get some of the gear. The actual way to level back then was fate trains. And I still remember like the fate trains of just going all night long in Northern Thanalan, where you just join a group, you just go back and forth, and there's big fate events. That's why they had, in A Realm Reborn, they had like a fate that you clear the fate, and then that spawns another fate, which spawns another fate, which then spawns a big giant boss fate, right? We don't really have that these days because there's not enough people in the player pool to really make that work. People aren't all that interested in fates. But back then, they wanted to really push fates. They want people to keep doing them because fates need a lot of players to do. It's very, very boring to do a fate by yourself. So parts of the relic grind for A Realm Reborn was fate grinding. Right? If you've done a relic, you remember the Atma grind. Now they've massively buffed the drop rate for that. Now you don't have to do nearly as many fates to get them. But back in the day, it was really, really bad. And then you've got other steps as well, where it's like, let's take things from what we're doing and let's put them in the game, right? So you've got, for example, the book step. Now, the book step was like, okay, well, starters, we've got more fates in the books, right? Watch out, we've got more fates. We've got leaves that you have to do to remind people that those exist, because leaves are also much, much bigger back in A Realm Reborn. We have the optional dungeons, like Wanderer's Palace, things like that. It's like, okay, we need you to do these optional dungeons. We need people to actually queue for these things so that they pop. And then it's like, okay, you need to hang around in the high level areas with level 50 enemies as well. Right? There's a lot of that. And that kind of defined the Zodiac weapons. Now, this is why they nerf it, because afterwards, it's like, well, we don't really have that kind of community anymore, right? We don't have that big fate grind, so there's no point asking you to do anywhere near the same number of fates. Doesn't make sense because it's not the same. So they don't. Now, Heavensward. Dungeons. Heavensward started to get big on the dungeons, which is why the animal weapon, mostly a dungeon grind. It's mostly a dungeon grind and a tomestone grind. And what's one of the best places to get tomestones from? Oh, it's dungeons. Right? They have a little bit at the start where it's like, it's fates. You know, you just need to do a little bit of fates in each of the Heavensward zones, but it very quickly goes away. And then the rest of Heavensward is just tomestones and dungeons. Because they really wanted to push that now of like, okay, we've got more dungeons. We need more people to do things. We need people to do the duty roulette, which is why the weekly duty roulette is a bonus in the relic grind, right? You get the singing clusters for doing duty roulettes. Again, it's like they're pushing that. That's the game design is pushing you to do things that involves other people to help fill the queues for things. Now, Stormblood comes out. Stormblood is all Eureka. Now, love it or hate it, you gotta admit that Eureka probably wouldn't be all that popular on its own without a relic weapon. Right? It's an interesting zone, but it requires a lot of players to make it feel good. Right? Especially back in the day before we had the echo buff. By the way, if you're ever curious, go into Eureka and just right-click your echo buff to get rid of it, and you get to see what your stats were like back in Stormblood. You'd be amazed just how big the echo buff is now compared to nothing back in the day. So they're like, okay, we've got this large field content zone. We know a lot of people probably won't be all that interested in it. Let's attach a relic to it to get people to spend time in there and also spend more time in each zones. Because otherwise, like, you know, if you're finished with the Animos zone of Eureka, there's not really any reason to go back unless you're farming a ethereal stabilizer for BA. Very few people do. But unfortunately, I'm on the JP servers, so I do. Or you're doing a relic grind. And you might even do a relic grind if you're like helping out a friend. But that's like, hey, there's some part of that you can get then. You know, friends going through Animos for the first time. So that's Eureka. Having said that, there's a big thing about how nobody really did the Eureka weapons. They were very unpopular. Certainly some people did, yes, but in terms of like overall amount of players getting them, it's very low. It's very low. I've seen more people interested in doing the Edrem reborn zodiac weapons than the Eureka weapons, because I think they also kind of look, they don't look all that great as well by the end. But next we get into Shadowbringers, and this was bozja. But not just bozja. They kind of learnt their mistake from Eureka, right? Which is like, okay, we can't have you just doing the content in the zone because there's not everyone's interested in that, and that'll push a lot of people away. A lot of people that could be incentivized to do content, just not bozja content. So in Shadowbringers, they said, okay, we've got this new field content called bozja. You can do that, and you can get your relic pretty much entirely within that. Or, if you don't want to do that, here's a bunch of other things that you can do that all pretty much always involves other players, right? Now, part of what I think they did there is in Shadowbringers, they released the expanded free trial for the critically acclaimed MMORPG Final Fantasy XIV Online that now extends to level 70 and includes the entirety of the Heavensward and Stormblood expansion with no additional restrictions on playtime. So they added fate farming for Heavensward and Stormblood zones. And I think part of the reason for that may have been they wanted people to go around and make those zones feel alive for lots of new players coming through, right? They want people to, you know, they want the players that are doing a relic to mingle with the new players that are coming through. So that's there. And then they've also got other things as well, like, hey, we want you to do alliance raids to get some drops. We want to do these things. One of them that's still contentious at this moment is there's one step that requires you to either do Delibrum Regine, which, again, talking about this, has a player pool of nothing now, or Palace of the Dead, but you're only guaranteed to drop past floor 100. That's kind of one of the kickers for people these days. If they want to do a Shadowbringers relic, they get to that point, it becomes really, really hard to do. They often, either if they're really into Palace of the Dead, they can do that. Otherwise, they're probably going to have to make like a small party finder and hope that it fills for Delibrum Regine groups. Right? So this is why I also think that we see with the new field exploration content in 7.25 Dawn Trail, probably not going to have a step like that where we need to go into a large content zone that you got to queue into specifically. I would love in the future if they had some kind of incentive like a duty roulette, but maybe like a weekly thing to be like, hey, do a Delibrum Regine. Do a Delibrum Regine once per week and you get a big reward. I know that there's one thing like that already currently in Bozja, but that gives you awards for Bozja. I think it'd be interesting to have something else, right? Like how Faux Hollows is a currency that's not attached directly to Unreals, but it gets you things outside of that. Similar idea, right? Similar to like Mog Tomes kind of thing. I think that could help revitalize this and make that relic a bit better. Having said that, I'm happy that I grinded out every single Shadowbringers relic during Shadowbringers, so I never have to go back in and do another Delibrum Regine, because that would suck right now. I got speedrun groups when it was current content and everyone was trying to get through it and grind it all out fast. Now this is the bit that gets a little bit contentious. Endwalker is tomestones. Well, specifically, it's Hildebrand and tomestones, and it kind of goes a little bit against the pattern, right? Because Hildebrand is not actual content with other players. You're not increasing the player pool, except for maybe like the trials. You're kind of just going through it at your own pace if you want to. I think they possibly had different plans here. Although I will say the tomestones, at least, it's like, okay, tomestones is still, hey, do content with other people. You know, it's a little bit boring to say like, hey, do duty roulettes or do this, but it's fine. I think another big problem with this is that when they released a new weapon stage, often people already had the tomestones saved up. So for them, it was essentially free. Like it was just instant. They could get their relic. Whereas like in other steps, it's like they introduce a new currency and now you got to grind it out. So everyone starts at 0 when the patch comes out grinding. I have a little theory though. And I've said to people of like, they could have gone this way. And I think they didn't because it would have pissed more people off than just doing tomestones. But Endwalker's big feature, like big feature that they were really working a lot on, that a lot of people kind of just miss because they don't do it, was PvP. PvP was massively overhauled in Endwalker, and we got Crystalline Conflict out of it. We got the simplification of all the jobs. So they had the few core abilities and they had the limit breaks and all that. And Endwalker is technically the first relic weapon you can grind entirely in PvP because it only requires tomestones. But I think they may have gone or wanted to go further at one point and wanted the Endwalker relics to be a PvP relic. Right? Because I think it's somewhat strange that we keep getting so many trophy crystals and we have nothing to spend them on. There's not really much to spend with them. And I think that's a possibility of what they were going for originally, is, hey, they wanted to have trophy crystals as a way to get the Endwalker relic. Now, whether or not people would have preferred that, that's definitely up for debate. I know a lot of people would have absolutely hated it, which is why I don't think they would have done it. Or they're possibly going to do like a dual system. Either way, not quite sure what happened there, but Endwalker, it's the easiest one to grind out now, certainly. Unless you want to actually do all of Hildebrand. So we got that. Now, the Dawn Trail one We don't yet know yet. Right? We don't know with Dawn Trail. How's it going to go? We know that it's attached to a cult crescent. Right? We know that it's attached to that. We know that it has some kind of grind, and the way that Yoshipi hinted at it, it seemed a little bit like it was an Atma grind, but not too bad. And we know that they're probably going to do the system like they did in Shadowbringers, where it's a dual system. They know some people don't like a cult crescent. Some people are not going to want to spend time in there. So they'll probably have a dual system where you can get items either inside the instance or outside. So it's more return to Shadowbringers, which I think is good because I think many people agree Shadowbringers is a pretty good relic grind to do. But yeah. Anyway, just wanted to do a quick little video because I know people get talk about like, hey, ideas for relics and how can we do this and how can we do that? And I always try to tell people like, hey, think about it from a game design perspective first, not what you individually want. Game designers are thinking like what's best for the community. Not individual players, not always, but what's best for the community first. And that's how the relics have been historically designed. So based on that, you can kind of guess where they're going forward as well. But anyway, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you again later.